Yes, guys, welcome to my third free training video, unlocking sales secrets for your clothing brand. Now, this is all in preparation for the launch of the Clothing Brand Blueprint program, which I'm sure many of you watching this will know what that is. But for those of you who don't, it's a program that I've spent the last year and a half to 2 years working on to create a program that is a literal blueprint from A to Z for startups and established brands to help you find your perfect manufacturer and build a clothing brand so good people are desperate to buy it. I've included the business models, how to do market research, how to source manufacturers, how to guarantee response rates, how to build products that actually sell and understand how to create best sellers and perennial sellers, how to market your brand, how to sell out your first drop, how to run Facebook ads, Google ads, TikTok ads, how to scale, and so much more. And this is all from my experience over the last 10 years working in this industry, building my own brands, helping established brands build theirs further, and everything in between. So I've poured my heart and soul into it to help as many of you as possible, as that is my true aim with all of this, is to literally just make all this knowledge accessible to you so that you understand how to take it and then grow from there, right? So that's what the program is. It launches on the 27th of August. It was originally the 13th, but I've decided to add some new content to it, which makes it even more valuable, which is why I've just added on an extra 2 weeks. So if you're here and you're not already on the waitlist, there'll be a button below that you can join the Blueprint waitlist. If you're already on it, then that's fine. I hope you enjoy this video. If this is the first video that you're watching, there'll also be a link down below where you can watch my first free training video and my second one. So the first one is tips for creating best-selling garments. The second one is an intro to sourcing manufacturers. And then obviously we've got this one here that's unlocking sales secrets. And so I've made them sequentially in order so that you kind of get an idea of the process from start to finish, and some actionable stuff that you can take away in preparation for the program to kind of implement and get you thinking about, right? But you can watch those videos if you've missed them. There'll be a link at the bottom of this page for each video. You can just click on it. It will take you to the relevant page. You can just go and watch that video, and this is all for free. So I really hope this helps some of you. So let's get straight into it. So, unlocking sales secrets for your clothing brand. This is what we're going to cover. This is the outline of it. I know sales feels daunting for a lot of people, even people who are established, and you hit that roadblock, you don't know how to scale and push past it. We're covering the fundamentals in this lesson, and the program will teach you how to implement a lot of the theory that you're going to learn in this. But I'm a big believer through my experience, to be honest. It's only the experience that has given me this thought that when you're starting out and you're new to something, you always think that there's that magic pill, there's that something that someone else has that key to unlocking that bit of knowledge, right? And it's never just a magic thing that makes one thing successful. It's always understanding the fundamentals and the basic theory and doing the basics right again and again and again and again. And that's what leads to scale. It's what leads to building a successful brand in any industry, right? And so that's what this is all about, helping you with the fundamentals so that you build on solid foundations, not crumbly ones, so you don't go up and then eventually crumble, right? This is for solid foundations so that you understand the theory behind selling, which so many people don't. Believe me, I get people asking me, oh, my Meta ads aren't working, my Instagram ads aren't working, my TikTok ads aren't working, Google ads, my organic content doesn't work, right? All of these things, but then after speaking to them, it takes a couple of questions to understand that they really don't understand why they're doing the things they're doing. And that's why it's not working, because you need that fundamental knowledge. When it comes to other platforms, all you have to do is, if you understand the fundamental theories behind how things sell, particularly on an online basis, D2C, as in direct to consumer, you can then apply this to anything else that crops up, right? So that's what we're going to go through. So these are the topics we're going to cover: what brand actually means, only ways to sell anything, the two key terms you need to understand, and building a sales funnel. So what does brand actually mean? I want you to think about that for a minute and just think, how would you explain to me what brand means? But I took the liberty of going onto Google, of course, and looking at Oxford Languages and seeing what their definition of it was. So their definition is a type of product manufactured by a particular company under a particular name. Okay, great. Like that, it kind of makes sense. So in theory, you've got a brand Everyone's got a brand, right? You've manufactured a product, you've made the product, you've slapped your name on it, potentially a logo, and now you've registered a company to which you're selling it under. So in theory, you now have a brand, right? But what does brand actually mean? So what brand actually means is an association between two or more things. And in order for that product or that thing that you're selling to be successful, the person that you're presenting it to or selling it to needs to know about one of them. So, for example, on this image here on the right, if you're going, what does that mean? You can see this is Burberry. This woman's wearing a Novacek Burberry dress. She's also got a Burberry bag. Now, when you see that, what are you thinking? What's the associations you are making? And it's most likely going to be luxury and expensive, those two things. And that's what that brand has sold to you time and time again, has told you about, has made that association with. We are expensive, we are luxury. So now when you see that and you see their branding, because you've got brand recall going on, because they've marketed to you so many times that everyone knows what Burberry is, or most people watching this will know who Burberry is, right? And that's because you're able to recall that brand, and you understand that the association between that brand, the Novacek pattern, the word Burberry, is all in association to luxury or expensive, right? And that's all brand is. It's making associations with things. There's part of the program, right, that we go through mastering your market, understanding your niche, and understanding your sub niches and your micro niches, all these things. And so once you understand who you're selling to, then you can understand the associations you need to make. Because to me, brand is selling. Because if you don't understand the associations that you're trying to make as a brand, then how can you understand who you're selling to? And in which case, if you're selling to someone, if you're just trying to sell to everyone, it's not going to work, because there's no associations there. You have to think about what clothing is. And clothing is a proxy for association to something else on the whole. Why do people buy Burberry? Why do people buy Gucci? Why do people buy Louis Vuitton? Knowing that the association there is luxury and expensive. The answer is status most of the time. Some people really love high quality garments with like beautiful fabrics and like really handcrafted, well put together things, right? But there comes a limit with clothing where actually you can get very high quality clothing for a fraction of the cost. Yeah. So then why are people still buying it? Brand. But it's the association, and it's the association of how they feel when they're wearing it, because they know it exudes something. And everyone's, you got to understand, when it comes to selling to anyone, you need to understand that people care about themselves, period. That's it. People only care about themselves. And so when they wear something, particularly clothing, it's to represent something that they believe they are, or to categorize them as the thing they want to be perceived as, if that makes sense. So I always come back to represent, because I know it's popular, and particularly for the males watching this, it's just such a buzzword at the minute. But George Heaton, right, the founder of that, said when he released the 247 range, which is his kind of CrossFit gym training range, that he thought that people would buy into that and then cross-sell into his main line, which is the more streetwear style, just hoodies, tees, basic stuff, right, that just says represent on. And so what actually happened was the 247 range attracted so many more people that they ended up buying into the main line, and it was reverse to what he thought was going to happen. But that makes a lot of sense to me, right? And it's because people want to be associated with the thing they care about. Okay, if you're a hybrid athlete, which is popping off everywhere at the minute, everyone's got that in their bio if they do a bit of training or go to one High Rocks event. Like, if you want to be associated with that, because he's released that line, he's created so much content, he himself embodies that lifestyle. Now, by proxy, that association has been made to his main line. So now his main line, they represent actual streetwear style brand, that's just literally his hoodie, his t-shirt that says represent on, or owners club, or these things, they represent something else. They have an association with something else that means when that person wears it, they know the type of person that they're portraying, and other people can recognize it and be like, oh, I bet that guy's into, long distance running or CrossFit or whatever. It's the association that's made that's actually sold them into it in the first place. I touched on this in creating a best-selling garment, that free video, right? That you can't just slap your brand name on at the start when nobody knows who you are and nobody understands the associations you're trying to make and expect that to sell really well. It's not going to do that because it means nothing to nobody but you at that time because you haven't built the associations up. And that process also takes time. You know, you've got to spend time developing those associations so that someone can recall, look at that brand and go, oh, yeah, I know what that means. I know what that association is. So, first and foremost, before you even think about selling, you need to sit down as a brand and go, what's our associations? Think about it. Palace Skateboards, Supreme, streetwear brands, right? But really skateboard brands or skate brands, right? It's that association that's then bled into other associations. And it's the same if you look at, the North Face outdoor wear brand aimed at outdoor activities to start with in the niche. But now you see rappers wearing it. It's big in streetwear. A lot of people wear it. And it's because they keep building new associations. And you can do that, but you start out with the first association and the first subset of people that you want to sell to, which would be your core set of people, and then you can build off it. A lot of people are like, how can Nike or how can these, or Nike for the Americans, like these big brands just sell to what appears to be everybody? And it's because they started off not doing that and actually building into that and building more associations. Nike started off as track and field, purely running, right? Running trainers. Now they sell clothing, now they sell other products catered for other people and other associations. Now you can see Nike on music artists, people to do with food, every single sport. It's like, it's not just sport, it's like all the sports, which is all different associations that they're making, right? Like, and so many different things. You got basketball, football, baseball, whatever you want. They're there and they're associating their brand with it so that you can be like, okay, as a person, what's my values? So it's like, if I'm into basketball, then what am I going to wear? What's available to me so that I can communicate to everybody else what I'm into? And I'm doing that through clothing, right? So it's like, oh, Nike, yeah. I know, like they had that on LeBron James. So like LeBron James is wearing Nike all the time, and he's obviously a sick basketballer. So therefore, if I wear like that Nike basketball jersey, then I'm representing what I'm about and what I'm interested in. And people do this subconsciously. Everything, like clothing in itself, is just a communication of who you are. And so always start by understanding the associations that you want to make. Okay? Because when you do that, then you understand who you're selling to. And once you understand who you're selling to, everything else becomes a lot easier because you understand how to sell to them, how to speak to them to get them to purchase, and all of these things. And this is so important. It's like people just miss this part and they're like, yeah, let's make a clothing brand. Let's just slap my name on it. It's going to sell. Like tees and hoodies sell all the time, like all of this shit. Like, no, because you haven't built strong associations, and you can do that in multiple ways, and we'll go through some of them in a minute, and obviously more in the program. So, like I said, understanding brand is understanding who you are selling to and how you are selling to them. So I really want you to think about that to start with, and like what your brand actually is, and what are the associations. Are you associated to, cooking? Are you associated to an activity, a sports activity? Are you associated to music? Are you associated to like comic books? Are you associated, like, if you think about all the best brands, they're associated to something, and you could think of it straight away. And it's also, the clearer the association, the easier it is to sell, because that person can easily identify, oh yeah, that represents me because that's what I'm into. If you're into hip hop and just you've got like, okay, let's say you want to associate your streetwear brand with hip hop, right? Which is a common association that streetwear brands try to make, but you actually manage to cement that association by getting your clothing on every single hip hop artist in the world. Then as soon as, someone tries to make a decision about what they're going to purchase between you and another brand, even if it's a basic hoodie, if they've seen all their favorite hip hop artists because they're a hip hop fanatic wearing your brand, it's not going to be a difficult decision for them to choose between your brand and another brand. They're going to choose yours because the association there is stronger. And so it's not just about making associations, it's about building stronger associations. and really thinking about smartly how you can cement those associations so that you can sell to that particular customer or prospect based on what their beliefs, what their values are, and what they're trying to communicate to the world. Okay? So, yeah, that's enough on that. We'll move on to the next bit now, but please think about it and please, really, really take the time to understand what your brand associations are. And honestly, your brand will do so much better just from that small tweak alone, because so many people don't do it because they don't understand that. They don't understand what brand is. So build your associations. Now, the only way is to sell anything. People get so daunted when it comes to sales, and I understand why, because there's a lot out there on the internet. There's a lot of people on YouTube, there's a lot of people on Instagram Shorts, and they're all, "Hey, look at this amazing strategy. We made $1 million in a week. We did this, we did that." They're all short-term hacks, right? They're all like things that aren't tangible for the long term. They're not evergreen in their nature. And it's all things to complicate you and make you think, oh, okay, I've got to run Facebook ads. I've got to make content on TikTok. I've got to make content on Snapchat. I've got to run Snapchat ads, Google ads, all these things. What they're not telling you is just drop all that for a minute and come back to the fundamentals, because you can get stressed about all the individual platforms. Like I said at the start, you can get stressed about that and get confused and delve deep into all these platforms, but you're a brand owner, assuming you're watching this because that's what you want to do, or you already are. You're a brand owner, right? Your job isn't to, delve super deep into all of those platforms. It's to understand the fundamental theory that you want to implement into those platforms and put the right people in the right places. I mean, should be your goal, because at some point when you do turn to scale, you want to move from working in your business, which is likely if you're a startup you're doing right now, to on it. And that's a key point as well when you want to scale. You have to bring systems in, you have to bring people in. But in order to bring those people in the future and, be able to lead them in a way that's correct and is going to move the needle and push you forward, you need to understand the fundamentals of why things are happening and what should be going on. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is strip everything back for you and be like, right, these are the fundamentals. So in order to sell anything, we first need attention, right? It's pretty obvious. Marketing and sales intertwine all the time, particularly when it comes to e-commerce. Like, you don't have to be at the end of a sales funnel and be like, right, we've got to close this person on the phone. It's not cold calling. You don't have to do that. So marketing and sales intertwine. So then it's like, okay, in order to sell anything, if we first need attention, right, how do we get attention? How do we get people to know about our stuff, basically, is the question we're asking. And when you ask that question, it's like, okay, so we've just made this product, or we've made this collection. We need people to know about it, right? That simples it down. You don't need to be thinking about Facebook ads, TikTok, all these things just yet. You need to be like, right, we need to map out, how do we get people to know about our stuff? And so there are only two ways to get people to know about your stuff. And that is through posting free content, or organic, as in you're not paying for the advertising that you're doing, right? Or you're paying for it. It's paid. You're paying for reach in terms of on ad platforms, or a lot of different things that we'll go into in a minute, right? There's only those two ways. So how do you get people to know about your stuff? Well, you either create stuff for free or you pay for reach, and that's it. So you create stuff for free in the hope for reach, or you pay for that reach and guarantee it, which is why I'm a big fan of paid ads as well, and actually using both at the same time. If to sell we need attention, right? You got to just think about that for a minute. If you've got a website, in order to make sales and get people to there, what do you need? You need traffic, you need eyeballs. But how do you get traffic? How do you get eyeballs? You have to understand where that attention is. And so that's always going to be, through down here, an organic method or a paid method. That's how you're going to get the eyeballs. It's how you're going to get the attention. Now, the platforms we'll go into in a second, but now you understand, okay, well, I can either do one of two things. I can do stuff for free, post free content, or I can pay for reach and run ads. Those are the two things, genuinely, on the whole, unless you want to sell in a B2B capacity. But that's where it comes into, there's only two ways to sell. You can sell one-to-one or one-to-everyone. And this is like something Alex Hormozy, who I think is brilliant at business advice, and honestly recommend you all to go follow him. He's theorized this and synthesized it down to something he calls the core four. His way of explaining this is brilliant, in my opinion. And so you can either sell one-to-one or one-to-many. So one-to-one would be you trying to sell in a B2B capacity to a retailer. Well, you're going to be dealing with one person most of the time, so it's going to be dealing with the buyer. So it's either going to be on the phone or an email. But then one-to-many, which is where most of you are going to sit for a clothing brand, or where you should start, because you should be selling D2C online. You're either posting free content, which is free, and getting reach for it, or you're paying for that reach. And that's just, you're doing one thing once and it going out to a lot of people at once. Okay? Those are the only two ways you can tell people about your stuff. It's one-to-one or one-to-many through organic or paid means. And then there's two audiences. So like I've said, there's two ways to get attention, and now there's two audiences. They're warm or cold. This is just sales jargon. It basically just means people who know you and people who don't know you. So cold is people who don't know you. They've never heard of you. There's no touch points with your brand. If you're just starting out, everyone's cold. As soon as you start running ads or post one bit of content, someone sees it, they start to become warmer, because now they're familiar with you. They've seen you once. And the whole aim of it is getting someone from cold all the way down to boiling hot, basically, to the point where they've just bought from you and they continue to buy from you again and again and again and again. That is the whole aim, right? But it starts with understanding that there's two ways and there's two audiences, organic and paid, and there's cold or warm. So you need to understand how to speak to both of them. And those associations that we talked about a minute ago comes into that, because that cold audience that you're trying to reach out to is still a specific subset of people based on that association that you've made as a brand, because that's who you're targeting. So if you're creating a piece of content and it's free and you're sticking it on Instagram Reels or TikTok, how you create that piece of content and who it's aimed towards is really important, because then who that is supposed to reach is your core audience that you're trying to sell to. And the thing is, if you make something with a clear association in mind, serve it to the right people, or the algorithm serves it to the right people, that's how content does really well. That's how ads do really well. And so that's why associations pull into this and are so important as well. And this line here epitomizes that. Attention is king, but only the right attention equals money. Attention is king. That's all you need. Attention equals money. That's why, like, when new ad platforms pop up or new social medias pop up, like TikTok, people flood to it to get as much reach as they can, right? And that's why they let the social media platforms themselves allow you to get more reach at the start. If you were on TikTok 4 years ago, you'd have got way more reach organically now, even if you're posting shite videos. And that's because the platform wants that to happen. They want acquisition of people coming in. They want new people to use their platform, so then they can charge, because they've got eyeballs. And once you've got eyeballs, you know that advertisers are interested, because now they can pay to advertise to the eyeballs that you've cultivated in your platform. Okay? So once you understand the associations you're making, then you understand what to create and where to create it and where to place it, which brings me on to my next point, understanding where the attention is. So right, now we understand there's only two ways that you can sell to someone or advertise to someone. Because like I said, to be able to sell anything, first people need to know about you. If they don't know about you, you're not going to sell anything. That's why, like, advertising up here, selling is advertising. Because it's a numbers game, particularly with e-commerce. It's how many of the most relevant people have seen what you're putting out, and what percentage of those buy. And then the magic is in building efficiencies within that and trying to pull more people out of the people that saw it and getting them to buy, so long as they are the right people in the first place. So, like I said, you've got two ways of selling: free or paid. That's it. Two types of audiences: cold or warm. People who know you, people who don't know you. Now you need to understand where they are. Where is that attention? Now, this is pretty obvious. I've mentioned quite a few already, but you've got all social media platforms. And the beauty is you can post free stuff on these now, and the algorithms have changed. Like, they're pushing that UGC style. They're pushing that organic content. And it's switched from showing content that you create to your followers to showing content to people who it thinks are interested in that style of content. So it's even the playing field out. You don't need to have 1 million followers anymore, because you can create one piece of content that then goes and gets 1 million, 5 million views. That's the sick thing about it. People will moan like ad costs are rising, all this shit. Yeah, but it's never been easier organically. You don't even have to pay for it. You can just fucking hammer home content all day, every day, 10 times a day on multiple different platforms, all for free, and get thousands, if not millions of views for your brand. And that's free. And people just don't seem to understand that. So you've got to understand where the attention is. Social media platforms, all of them, Meta, TikTok, Snapchat, Pinterest, YouTube, all of them, and all the placements within that. You know, you've got Instagram, you've got Reels, you've got Stories, you've got YouTube Shorts, you've got YouTube long form. You know, you want to be making the most of all of that. And then obviously within that, you can pay for it as well. You can pay for the attention, but that's where the attention is. Again, it comes back to, you can get attention organically on those platforms, or you can also get attention paid. So you can pay for it, or you can produce organically. You should be doing both. And you should start off, particularly when you're starting, by concentrating on one platform and trying to smash that. Unless you're creating something like a reel, you may as well be posting that on YouTube Shorts and TikTok all at the same time, because it's the same video, same piece of content. So you should be trying to get more eyeballs for it and amplify it. But when it comes to like paid, for example, if you start out and you're like, oh, you know, I can only spend £10 a day, there's no point splitting £10 between like 5 different platforms. You might as well put that all into one platform and build the efficiencies from there and then scale out. But my point is, you've got to understand where the attention is. We've said social media. It's also in influencers. You can use other people's attention. And that brings us back to associations again, right? If you think about Vanquish Fitness or any of these other fitness brands, why do they work with influencers? Think about it in terms of associations. Now, if you've got a fitness influencer who posts content about eating healthy, training regimes, being in the gym, all that stuff, then by association, people who view that person's content view them as someone who embodies all of those things. So they start to associate in their mind going to the gym, eating healthy, having a great training regime, having a great body, all of these things with that person, with that particular person. And so if you think about it, if I say, right, okay, let's get our clothing brand, because that's the association we want to make. We want people to believe, you know, if you're into fitness, if you're into all these things, we should be the clothing brand that you choose to wear. Then if you stick that on that influencer, by proxy, again, the people who are watching that person, that influencer, who they already associate those things with, then start seeing that person wearing that t-shirt, that hoodie, that whatever it is, then start associating what they're wearing with what they do and what they already believe about that person, i.e. they go to the gym, you know, eating healthy, getting a good body, all of these things. And so that piece of clothing on that influencer then becomes a symbol that represents that association. So people then, when they're trying to make a decision, oh, what should I wear to the gym? Or, you know, what do I want to wear? What hoodie should I buy? Boom. One of those brands comes out based on that association that other people have made, because it starts to represent something more than just a piece of fabric. Like I said, going off on a tangent, but this is understanding where the attention is. So we've got all social media platforms, we've got influencers, we've got a very underrated one, which is collaborations. Now, you're not always going to be able to go out from the start and collaborate with someone who's got 1 million followers. You might be able to collaborate with someone who's already built those associations, who belongs to the associations that you want to make. And they might have like 3,000 followers or something like that, but still that's leverage. People don't do this enough. Collabs all the time, because you're building, it's the easiest way to steal someone else's audience for a start. You're basically stealing what they've created and like getting a crossover of audience, which is why it's hard to do and people to accept at the start. But when you kind of hit like, you know, a few thousand followers in it, people seem to like to do it. Or you can cross into other industries if you're looking to build other associations, right? For example, even though this isn't one, if the North Face wanted to really start cementing themselves as like a running brand, then they might choose to collaborate with Pure Sport. Now that's a collaboration that would be way below them in terms of followers. However, this is a very niche audience in Pure Sport, people who are obsessed with running, given that running's a huge trend, that then they would be able to steal a lot of their audience, but also Pure Sport wouldn't say no, most likely, because they're going to get loads of people from here as well. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship, but there's attention there. And that's my point. That's where you're looking to get attention from. So you've got social media, you've got influencers, and you've got collaborations. Then you've got email automation service providers like MailChimp and Klaviyo. But that comes off the back of you building attention elsewhere and then honing in on it to be able to, like, you know, get opt-ins for your newsletter and do things like that, and then build a relationship with them, and there's attention there in your email list effectively. And then the last two ways, you've got trade shows. If you want to sell B2B particularly, you can rock up to a trade show with a pitch. You can speak one-to-one to people, or one-to-many on the day, but one-to-one usually. Someone comes in and goes, oh, what's this brand about? Someone from ASOS comes over and says, oh, we're looking, tell us about your brand, all this stuff. There's attention there. And then you've got guerrilla marketing, which is just trying to pull a viral stunt which really nowadays, it kind of interlinks with the social media platforms, because usually it's done so that it can be clipped and made viral on social media. It's not as complicated as you need to make out. So when it comes to asking that question, we want to start selling. How do we sell? Right. So we need to understand we can only do two ways. We can post stuff for free and we can run paid ads. Those are the two ways. Now, who are we selling to? Now, you know your associations first, but the only two audiences are going to be people who know you and people who don't know you. So you need to think about how you're going to speak to those people at two different times, and we'll talk about that more in a second. Now you need to understand where's this all happening? Like, where are we doing this? On all social media platforms for all of you, and in a paid and organic sense. That's the only way to sell e-commerce wise at the minute. Obviously, you've got influencers as well, but it's all leveraging those social media platforms. And then there's the other ways I mentioned. So hopefully that really narrows it down for you, and I hope it was not too complicated. I tried to simplify it a lot. So hopefully you can take that now and feel comfortable in the fact that, oh shit, these actually are the only ways. So that's all I need to think about right now. Like, what's my strategy on Facebook? What's my strategy on Instagram? What's my strategy on Snapchat? What's my strategy on TikTok? What's my strategy on YouTube? All of these things. And it simplifies it. It's like, oh, well, now I understand my associations. So then you can think, right, there's people who know me. So they're already familiar with me. How do we create content and run paid ads for these people? Like, how should we talk to them in the things that we create? Because they already know us, they're familiar. What's the language we use? What do we present to them? And then you've got people who don't know, who've never heard of you. The trust is low. How do we speak to them organically? How do we speak to them paid? How do we create content for them organically? How do we create content for them paid? And that's it. It's as simple as that. Once you understand that, right, you really narrowed it down who it is, then it becomes easier. And those are the ways to sell anything. You look on those platforms, you look on those methods of where the attention is, and you go, right, how do we dominate on each one of those? How do we get as many people, as many eyeballs on each of those ways? Because eyeballs equal money. Traffic equals sales. So first you need to get the eyeballs, then you need to move the eyeballs to the place where you want to sell them, which is going to be your website. And then you want to actually sell them, right? So next. Right, so now we have the two key terms, and these are so important. I really want you to understand these and get it into your head, because this will be the difference between the people that like start a brand and make it and the people that don't, because they understand this. They don't have to get pulled into all the other jargon and all the other bullshit, right? Because you understand these key fundamental terms. So number one, we've got customer acquisition. Now, what is customer acquisition? It just means acquiring a customer into your business for the first time, i.e. they have never paid or bought a product from you before. They might have heard about you, so they might be warm, but they haven't bought anything from you yet, so they're not a customer. So as soon as they've purchased from you, they become a customer, and then you get details from them, like their email address and phone number, that then you can speak to them in the future to try and resell them on things for a lot cheaper than you probably acquired them for. So it's easier for me to talk about this in terms of paid ads because it'll make more sense to you. So understanding the costs associated with this. So let's put a scenario out there. Let's say, and it's simplistic as well. So no one being like, oh, what that's an unrealistic scenario. This is just to make sense, right? Let's say you're selling a t-shirt and it costs you £10 to make and you're selling it for £20. So £10 to make, £10 gross profit, not net profit, gross profit. Right, it's not taking into account your overheads and stuff. We'll go into all that in the program. But you've got £10 of gross profit there. Now, let's say you want people to go and buy that t-shirt. So you think, okay, let's set up an ad on Meta. Let's start running ads. So you go into the business manager, you set up an ad, you set up your campaign, put your ad, press publish. You've put £10 a day on because you're brand new and you're just starting out. You don't have much money yet. And let's say from that £10, 200 people see that ad. They see the ad, and this is off the whole day. Now, let's say of the 200 people that saw that ad, 100 of them go to your website, to that product page with that t-shirt on for £20. Now, let's say of those 100 people that went to your website, one of them purchases, just one. So that means that you've spent £10 that day to make a sale of a £20 t-shirt that costs you £10 to make, that you're selling for £20, meaning you made no money that day. In fact, if you take into account net profit, you probably lost money. And this can happen at scale, obviously, and things like that, but we're just trying to keep it simple. So you could have lost money on that. Now, most people would be like, oh no, like ads don't work, this doesn't work, all this bullshit that like you'll be fed elsewhere. That's not the truth. Yes, there's efficiencies within it. Yes, you can get more reach for the money you spend by creating better ads or optimizing your landing page, be it your actual product page, or maybe having a better product that people are more likely to sell, or creating better associations and creating a product that suits those associations. Yeah, there's loads of little things. But in theory, you've just made a sale. So you've just acquired a new customer. And just because you've made no money there, it doesn't mean that you're not going to make any money off this person again. And that's the beauty of it. You in theory, you want to acquire as many customers as possible. But what becomes important is where the money comes from next. And that is how business works. It's like, what is next? And that's effectively what a business model is. What is your plan to get money or make money? And with a clothing brand, it's kind of easy. You've got another drop, more clothing, a new collection. You've got that next thing. And the next thing is where all the money comes from, where the profit is. It's not the first one. Everyone's so obsessed with the first sale and losing on it or making on it. And yet, of course, the gold star of like advertising is if you can be profitable on acquisition, then you can scale to the moon. That's the truth. You can acquire so many customers, and there's methods to do that, and we'll talk about them in the program. But just coming back to this scenario, people would be devastated. But the reality is, you should be thinking, right, I've just acquired one customer. How am I getting more money out of them in the long run? And we'll come back to the lead magnets in a second, because the next key term goes with what I'm saying at the minute. And it comes to LTV and your retention strategy. And retention strategy is just what I've just said. It's what's next. It's the question of what's next. So if you produce one collection, and let's say it's just got one t-shirt in for ease, that t-shirt for 20 quid, and over a month you get 10 people buy it, all at that £10 cost. So you haven't made any money, but you've acquired 10 new customers, right? And then you drop another collection on month 2. Let's say you get another 10 customers in the same way, but you've lost on those customers. It's their first order. You've just acquired 10 more. However, what has happened is those 10 from the first drop have just come back and bought again on the second drop because there was something else to buy, and you had their details to be able to message them with an email or retarget them, which is going to be cheaper because they've already bought from you. So they've gone from cold to warm to hot. So they bought from you, they're hot, so they're ready to buy again because they trust you, providing you've delivered a really great service, great unboxing experience, your product's great, all of those things. Month 2, yes, another 10 people have come in and you're not profitable on those, but it might cost you £2 per person to get the 10 that bought on month 1, right, to come back and buy again. Meaning that the gross profit there is now £8, right, per person. So you've actually made £80 of gross profit here, but you've lost on these guys. And then what happens is it compounds over time. So month 3, what happens? These people come back again. A percentage of new people come back in here. And that's how you scale. And the profit comes after, which is what lifetime value is, right? So LTV just stands for lifetime value. And it's the value associated with a customer over a given period of time. So you could measure this over any time period you want. You could do 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 2 years, whatever you want. Like the longer you're going on, the larger this will be. And it's an average value associated with your average customer. So on average, from every customer that we acquire, how long are they buying with us and how much do they spend during that period of time? And if you think about it, if you understand what that is, then you can spend infinitely high on the front end on acquisition, right? So even in that scenario on month 1, where it's 20 quid and they've cost you £10, and you haven't made any money, right? But over the course of 10 months, let's say, right, they buy every single month and it only costs you £2 each time to bring them back. Well, then you're making £8, £8 for the next 9 months, right? And so let's say you make that £80 or whatever the maths goes out to. Let's just say it's £80 for the 10 months, right? And then you go, right, okay, so I know over a 12-month period, on average, people spend that much money. They're worth £80 to us, right, over a 12-month period or a 10-month period. Then can we spend more than £10 on acquisition and get even more people in and acquire them, even if it's unprofitable, because we know we're going to make profit here and over time? That's how the big brands do it. That's how the big brands scale and price everyone out, because you've got to think, in paid ads, it's an auction, and it's based on a formula. And part of that formula is advertiser bid. And effectively, what the algorithm does is it looks at this formula and it decides who's going to win the auction, meaning who's going to win the placement in front of the prospect that you're targeting. So if I'm trying to target people who are interested in tennis for my tennis clothing brand, and then another brand is, I can't think of a tennis brand, maybe Wilson or something like that, I don't know, or Head or something like that, and then you're competing with them, and let's say they're well bigger than you at that point, which they will be, meaning they're spending a lot more, then what it's going to look at, it's going to look at the quality of the ad, right? The quality of what you're putting out, the estimated action rates, which means the kind of the people that online that it estimates to take action on something that you're optimizing for at that time. So if you're optimizing for purchases and you want a sale, then it's going to take into account all the people within the audience that you're targeting that are online right now that could take that or are estimated to take the action that you want. And then, like I said, it's going to take into account how good the ad is and how valuable that is to the end user. And then lastly, it's going to take into account the advertiser bid. So how much are you willing to pay to acquire that customer? And so these things, I won't get into the complexities of that right now, but these things here will be assigned a score. And then effectively, if all of these were 10-10, right? So there's only a certain amount of people online with the estimated action rates at one point, and your ad is a 10-10, so your ad is just as good as a bigger brand. What does it come down to then? It comes down to who's willing to spend the most on the customer. And big brands, because they understand LTV, they understand how much a customer's worth to them over time. They understand that they can spend unprofitably on the front end and price you out. So who gets that sale in that scenario? When Facebook's algorithm goes, okay, there's two ads here. This person's online. We've got 2 t-shirts for £20. Who wants to buy them? Everything else is equal, but they're willing to spend £20 more than you on acquiring that customer, then that's the final piece of the auction puzzle. So they're going to then, like, the algorithm is then going to show their ad to get that sale instead of your ad, right? So then that customer goes and purchases with them because they were willing to spend more because they understand LTV and what it's worth to them over a given period of time. And you can only understand that if you build a retention strategy and keep going and have the next, what's next, the next collection, the next season, the next drop, whatever that is, which is why I say, what is your retention strategy? Because that needs to be thought about at the start if you want to build a business. It's not, here's my collection, please work. It can't be that. And when you build this in from the start, you're not going to be as worried because there's a what's next. Because if you do all the things that I teach you in the program, you will make sales. But then it's what's next that builds the brand. And that's so important, because that is how you become a market leader, and that's how you beat everyone in your market, because you outprice everybody. There's a quote, I can't remember who said it, but he's a famous marketing guy, and he says, whoever can afford to spend the most to acquire a customer wins. And that is the truth. And you only do that by understanding your acquisition cost and your LTV, because the reality is, even if that customer in that scenario was worth £80 to you over 10 months, let's say £80 of profit, just for the sake of it, right? And you spent £10 unprofitably the first time, but he's worth £80 to you in profit. Well, you could spend £40 and be minus £30 on the first to acquire that customer, and still know you're going to make £40 out of that person. So would you do it over time? Of course you would do it, because it's profit. It's profit that's coming. So the customer acquisition, LTV. In order to understand the costs associated with acquisition, you have to start running ads and understanding these things and seeing how much it's costing you. But the one way, other than building the efficiencies in that will keep those costs coming down, and also creating brilliant products which will also, reduce costs, the game of advertising then just becomes like the efficiencies there. It's just like, how can we get those costs down and down and down? But eventually, as you scale and get huge, it's very hard to, like, if you've done all the efficiencies, you can't keep bringing your ad costs down and down and down as you spend more and more. It's going to, acquisition costs are going to rise and rise over time as you're trying to build new associations. That takes different touch points with different people and all of that stuff. So it really comes down to, the money is made on the model, the business model, the what's next, the next thing. So you have to know the next thing. You have to know your retention strategy. Now, this brings me back to the use of lead magnets for a clothing brand. Now, a lead magnet is something that attracts someone to you for a cheaper cost than maybe something else. If you're trying to sell someone £100 hoodie, you've got to think the thought that goes into buying a £100 hoodie might take multiple touch points. Whereas if you're like, right, here's a £5 cap or a £20 cap, they're more likely to come in and try your brand on a less expensive item, and then you'll give them a brilliant experience. It'll ship the next day. The unboxing experience will be brilliant. All of these things, they'll be so much more likely to come back and then buy with you again. So the real building is done after the first sale, but so many people just focus on the first sale and nothing else. But really, you have to build in what comes next, because that's where the magic is, that's where the money is, and that's where you scale, is the what's next. Outside of clothing, people call it a value ladder. You know, people can come in, opt in for something free, like free information, free something. And then from that point, you've built trust, you've got their details, you can start emailing them because it's cheaper than running ads. And then from that point, you can sell them into the next thing on your value ladder to then upsell them again to the next thing, usually in a higher cost scenario. But with the clothing brand, it's slightly different because you kind of have pricing that aligns with who you're targeting. But what you do have is you know what your next thing is going to be because you're a clothing brand. Whereas in other industries, it's difficult. Like, where's the money coming from? You've got to create new products and new things. Whereas with a brand, it's still difficult. You got to create things that are going to sell, but at least you know what's next and what should be next. It's an extension of what you've already made, right? So yeah, use lead magnets for your clothing brand. Lead magnets usually are accessories, like cheaper things that will attract people to buy, and then you can upsell them into, you know, your main lines and your clothing and all these bits at a higher price. But it helps the customer build trust with you first. That's why I say use lead magnets for a clothing brand. But really understanding these two key terms is so key, because at the end here, we've just been through how to get attention, traffic. This should simple it down for you. This is like your whole business. Like, after the product has been made, what you've got the products out there now. All you need to think about, how do we get traffic to our website? That's attention. That's everything we spoke about. The different audiences, different ways of getting people's attention, and the different platforms you can use. Right, that's traffic. But how do we push them there? Now you've got your sales system, right? This is your website. It's your actual product pages. How is that selling someone? And then once they've actually bought, you know, they've bought into your clothing brand, you've acquired a customer for the first time, albeit whatever the cost was associated with that. This is where your money is. Retention, your actual business model, the what's next. So you always need to know what's next. And I speak to people and all they're focusing on is the first thing. I know they're not going to go too far, right? Unless that first thing is absolutely amazing and will sell for a long time, and give them time to like bring in the what's next. So really important. I explain it further in the clothing brand blueprint, but I hope that's simple and like gives you something to think about and read into and learn even more about. So yeah, let's move on to the next slide. Right, so now we move on to building a sales funnel. I know like this video is going quite long, so I'll try and speed it up from here. But what is a sales funnel? So a sales funnel is just the journey a customer goes on towards a purchase, right? And we've got an example of one over here, like the stereotypical one called the AIDA sales funnel, which just means attention, interest, desire, action. Now, if you think about it, right, all the methods we've just spoke about, getting attention and doing all of that stuff, they would be feeding people into this funnel. Right, people who've never heard of you before are going in here all the time. They're just flowing in down this funnel. And then you've got, remember we spoke about two different types of audiences. So you might be putting cold people in here, people who've never heard of you before, which is why it's the biggest part of the funnel, right? Because you can get loads of people who've never heard of you to just know about you. Once they know about you, then they become warmer, right? And so now there's interest there. They're like, oh, I wonder what that brand's about. And if you've built the right associations, then they're even more interested. So the stronger those associations, they're more like, oh, we're really interested now. And so they would then move down and get even warmer to desire. They're like, right, oh, like we want to take action on this. This looks sick. Like this clothing brand represents exactly like who I am as a person. I want to wear it so that other people identify me with the association that I want myself to be associated with. And then they come down, and in theory, now they're really hot and they buy, and that's it. They come out the other end. And like I said, from here, this point, they've just come out, they've just been a purchase, they're a dollar sign to you right now. Then it's like, how do we sell them over and over and over again? And that's where the retention strategy comes in. It's where LTV starts to come in, all of these things. But you can't have LTV without a retention strategy and knowing what's next. And so that's how it all plugs in, how it links to the only ways to sell anything. right? Because first you need attention. To even sell anyone, like this funnel suggests, you first need attention. Because if no one knows about you, no one's buying. And so you're going to speak to cold people up here at the top. You're only going to put cold people in because it's only going to be people who don't know about you, because then they're going to know about you. Because when they're down here, you can still run ads to these or create content for these specific people who already know about you, but they're just further down the funnel. They're just sat there. So you could think, oh, once they're in here, not everyone just goes in through the top and straight down the bottom to purchase. Some people sit here for a bit. They're interested, but you haven't maybe built enough trust with them yet. You haven't maybe exposed them to your brand enough yet. Some people need multiple touch points to purchase, which is why ads can get costly. Like, you got to think about it. Repeated exposure to things subconsciously will then allow you to pull the trigger to actually go and purchase. And so that's why people will sit here for quite a bit. And those people need specific messaging. So those are the people that know you, they're warm in that bracket of the audience. Not like the people up here, they're cold, but as soon as they enter, they're getting warmer. And so if they're sat here for a while, they might see 3 organic posts, right? So maybe they came in here through an ad, right? They saw an ad, they'd never heard of you before, you targeted them, they saw an ad, they're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So they've moved down to this stage, right? And they're sat here. Then they might see a piece of content organically. And they're like, oh, that's still interesting, but they haven't moved down to, that's cool. Like, I'm interested in that. They're kind of floating on the edge. See another bit of content, bit closer to moving, but they're still like, no. And then they get hit with another ad that's speaking to this particular person, right? That association at the stage they're at in terms of their thinking. So they're warm, they're warm, then they know you, and now you've just hit them with an ad that's talking to them specifically with the stage that they're at in the sales funnel, so they're interested, but they haven't pulled the trigger yet. And then all of a sudden, that touch point, which was after coming in for the first initial ad, couple of organic posts that they've seen, now they've been hit by a retargeting ad, right? Just hitting them specifically with a specific message. Then they go, oh wow, like now I'm hungry. Now I want to buy this thing, and they move down here. And then that process can go on. Some people can wait here for a little bit, and then eventually you push them down, and more exposure, more content, more ads, all of those things, and they come down here to buy. Understanding the sales funnel is also understanding sales, but like I said, you don't have sales without starting with attention. So therefore you don't have sales without marketing, particularly in an e-commerce capacity. So understanding this is really, really, really important. And so, like I've said, this is cold to warm to hot. Cold coming in the top, warm here, and then coming out hot. And that's where the money is. Like I said, I can't stress that enough. LTV, those repeat purchases is really important. And you can utilize your platforms of attention, like we've discussed. You've got all your social media, you've got your influencers, you've got all these things. That's all thinking about how do you plug those in. So if you look at this model here, this sales funnel, and you go, right, if that's what the typical customer journey looks like, how do we link all of these platforms of attention into it so that we can get the flow going? And how then do we create on these other platforms to target people in these other areas to get them to purchase? So again, like, this bit feels complicated maybe to some of you, but the reality is it starts off by understanding that there's only 2 ways to get people's attention. There's only 2 types of audiences, right? So they come in here. So what you do is you create content specifically for each type of audience. You plug in all the platforms to just keep funneling in people who've not heard about you. You just let loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of people know about you in any way you can. Relevant people as well, because the more relevant the person, the quicker they're going to go through to this bit, right? There's different pockets of audiences, and that's what you want. That's what you want to leverage. And so after action comes retention. Like I said, it's your retention strategy. It's your LTV. It's where really the biggest amount of scale and the biggest amount of profit comes from. And understanding this will help you master all of your organic and paid efforts. 100%. Because when you know the associations that you're trying to make, the funnel stage that people are at, then you know the type of content and how to speak to them, like I've said before. If someone's never heard of you and you want to push them into this funnel, the way you'll talk to them is very different to someone who's down here in desire, who's like very close. They might have followed you for a month. They might have seen all of your content. They might have been exposed to multiple ads. And look, getting into how to do this with ads and how to do all of that, we'll cover that in the program. Don't have time to do that now. That's like a whole different beast, but this is what it starts with. You have to understand this bit first, because as soon as you understand, okay, this is all it is in terms of the customer journey, then when we're looking for marketing, which is just grabbing attention in different places, all we need to be like, right, where are we getting that attention? Then how are we speaking to the people in those different places of attention? And these different platforms that we're using, what's the norm on those platforms? How do we speak to them that is native to the platform that we're selling on? Because how you would create content for Instagram isn't necessarily how you create content that does well on TikTok, and isn't necessarily how well you create content that does well long form on YouTube. That's why that bit takes so long to master, because it takes a lot of people, it's a lot of time. And so, when you want to scale in general, right, it's just a theory of, okay, we spend X amount, we make X amount of content, get X amount of people in here. The more people that go in here, the more money you make at the bottom. That's the reality. It's a numbers game. And then it becomes about the efficiencies within that. So it's like, if I get 1 million people in here, how many of them purchase, right? And if that number's too low, then it becomes a game of, okay, how do we squeeze efficiencies out of this? So how do we make the sales page better? How do we make the ads better? How do we make the content better? How do we make the whole funnel better so that we get more sales for the amount of people that come in? And that's it in a nutshell. And this is evergreen. This is the strategy that has worked for years and years and years, and will work for years and years and years. So this is what you need to understand, because when you understand this, you come to a new platform. There'll be new platforms in the future, I'm sure, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is. TikTok wasn't about like ages ago, right? Now you can advertise on it. It's very similar to the way you can advertise on Meta. And so once you understand the sales funnel, all you do is you go, right, okay, this is what we've got set up. This is how we acquire customers. This is the model. This is the funnel. This is the content we create. How do we then apply that to this new platform? How do we make it native to this new platform? But how do we apply this idea to that? How do we get our sales funnel into that? How do we get this new platform to work for the sales funnel that we want? How do we plug eyeballs into the sales funnel that we already have to get more money? And when you think about it like that, it starts to become quite simple, I hope. So yeah, that brings me to the end of this. Now, like I said at the start, Clothing Brand Blueprint launches on the 27th of August now, not the 13th. I'm just adding new content to it. I had an idea and I wanted to add this new content that makes it even more valuable. So yeah, that's when it launches. We cover this in much more detail, including how to implement a sales funnel into your brand and all of these things. As I've touched on in all the other videos, I'm only letting 2,000 people enroll on launch day to protect the integrity of it and maintain the success rate of it. So make sure you're on the list if you want to get it. There's a lot of people on the list already, and we're still a couple of weeks out. And like I've said before, it's a step-by-step guide for clothing brand success, and it's suitable for startups and established brands. And that's it. That's the end of the free training videos. If you haven't watched the other ones, then you can go and watch them at the bottom of this page. But I really hope that's helpful. And if my mission with all of this is to help as many of you as possible. So if you do have questions, or feel free to DM me. I can't get back to everybody, which is one of the reasons why I've made this program, because I physically can't answer the amount of people that message me every day. On the odd chance, if I can see a message, I'll reply to it if I can. And then if not, email me at info@jackgriffinparry.com. and I'll try and get back to you. But I truly hope this helps you. Please take the time to understand this bit, right? Before you stop worrying about all the ads and all the content, all this stuff, try and be like, right, what are the things we need to do? Right, so we've made the product now. Let's think about the sales system. What's our retention strategy? How often are we going to release new clothing if that's where the money's coming from the start? Are we going to pour all our money into our first collection, or are we going to hold half back for the next release? And that's another good point just before I end. People ask me, how much should I put into ads, or if I'm going to pay for sales and things like that. And the reality is, I always like to go at least on a 1-to-1 ratio. If you're spending 50 grand on stock, you should be spending 50 grand on marketing, particularly when you're starting out. That's just a rule of thumb, by the way. It depends on a lot of things, but that's what I like to say. The point being, don't over leverage yourself on product until you know it's going to sell well, because you might have to create something else. And that theory still applies, that if collection 1 doesn't do so well, but you do acquire customers, those are the people you're going to get back in this second collection and start making more money. If you think about it, 10 people buy the first collection out of loads of people who visited, but then you drop something else. Those 10 people come back and you get another 10. Now you've got 20 customers, and that compounds over time and builds your brand and scales brands. And that's how it works. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that one. I know it's been a long one, so big love if you stayed till the end and watched it. But yeah, stay tuned. Big love.